If you've been exploring Arizona online and really dialed your search down to the Southeast Valley, I'm positive you've come across a place called Santan Valley. Now, Santan Valley is just south of Queen Creek, and it is technically Pinal County. So it's the most northern part of Pinal County, and there are some very distinct things about Pinal County and Santan Valley in particular that you know about before you make the dive into purchasing a home there. So that's what we're going to cover today. If what I go over does not scare you, no big deal. Santan Valley can be a phenomenal place to live. I actually raised my kids right there on the Queen Creek Santan Valley border, and so I'm very familiar with what Santan has to offer. We often just call it Santan for short, but we're going to dive right in today of the many pros, cons, and what you really need to know if you're checking out that area. So with Santan, we have to talk about the population. There's about 100,000 residents, and what used to be very rural, very low population has grown quickly. And the biggest reason really we saw it shoot off was during COVID for a couple reasons. One, because the home prices are so affordable. People could finally get out of their rentals, and they were willing to go a little bit further out to Santan, to a more rural area, because of affordability, and they were working from home. So they no longer had to worry about or consider a drive issue. And then with that, we also saw a lot of people during that time frame, because the interest rates were so low, they were scooping up houses left and right, from Wall Street portfolios to your next door neighbor who was looking to be a landlord, because they could purchase a home with really low interest rates at a very affordable price and turn it into a rental. So Santan has a pretty high density of rentals throughout their neighborhoods, as well as we're seeing more recently more and more apartment complexes come in that we hadn't really had before. And then these smaller, they look like little condo gated communities that are for rent only, small luxury rentals that are coming in as well. So we've seen the density really shoot up in Santan Valley. And one of the challenges with that is the traffic. And here's why. There's no freeways out there. So you're really stuck to taking essentially side streets, with the exception of a few larger arterial streets. One of them being Hunt Highway. Hunt is just crazy. You have to really be careful. There's a lot of police traps for speeding because people drive kind of crazy on Hunt Highway. And then there is Ironwood. Ironwood as well has people just drive really fast, a lot of car accidents. You have Ironwood, Hunt Highway, you have Ellsworth, Hunt turns into Ellsworth. And so those are kind of your major arterial streets, but outside of that, basically regular streets you're driving on, which with that many people, now that everyone's had to go back to work and so many employers are no longer working, allowing people to work from home, has become an issue. So unless you work from home or perhaps you're retired, traffic and drive time really does become something you need to factor in and consider before making the decision to buy in Santan Valley. But what about the schools? Well, speaking about driving, you may want to make sure that you're prepared to drive your kiddos to whatever school you decide to go to. And that's because in Santan, under, I believe it's the Coolidge School District now, the school ratings for the public schools are not super amazing. So in Arizona, we have something called an open enrollment policy. So the great thing about that, it means you really can enroll your kids wherever you would like. So if you're not going to put them in charter school, or there's a few private schools, you can actually enroll them in a school in Queen Creek or Gilbert, or maybe closer to your work. But with that great open enrollment policy, or the charter schools, the private schools, means that you are now responsible for getting your kids to school. So that is something else to factor in if you're looking in the Santan Valley area. Really do your research on the education system out there. Are you fine with putting your kiddos in the local schools, or is that something you'd have to factor in is additional drive time to get your kids to school, or to work with a carpool system with other parents? Now, going back to driving, let's talk about shopping and dining, because there are not a lot of options in Santan Valley. For years and years, everybody basically is driven into Queen Creek or to Gilbert or to Mesa if they wanted to go to do a fine dining experience, because there are really no amazing sit-down areas in Santan Valley if you're looking for high-end fine dining. I mean, they've got the normal, Burger King and Taco Bell and Chick-fil-A and that kind of franchise item, but there's just nothing much more than, maybe some mom and pop bar and grills. The one place though in Santan Valley you really have to check out, the one that every time we have family that visits, we always go over to Santan Flat. Now, that you can get a great steak over there and they have delicious food, but it is definitely an experience. You'll fit right in if you love that cowboy experience. It's quite a sight to behold, and they have this outdoor eating area where there's fire pits everywhere. It's very cozy, it's great, it's packed to the gills as soon as our snowbirds come back. So from 4 p.m. on, you should anticipate a really good long wait, 7 days a week. But if you do go over there, which I highly recommend, make sure to get their rancher tips. They are delicious. Now, way back when we lived on property out there, because hey, that's where a lot of people go, is right there in that Queen Creek border or Santan to purchase homes with property. We were there every week because we literally lived within walking distance of Santan Flat. And it's been crazy. The rancher tips have gone from, when we first started going, they were like $8 a basket, and I think now they're like $18 or something crazy, but well worth the experience. And then also, if you have little ones and you're doing the outdoor dining around the fire pits, they have these little kits that you can purchase that is like a s'mores kit, which is really fun too. But everybody, as soon as they come to town, first thing they say is, when are we going to Santan Flat? Now, you can drive in, like I said, you're fairly close if you want to drive into, there's the Olive Mill, which has some really delicious dining. But essentially, you're going to be going into Queen Creek if you want to hit things like Buffalo Wild Wings or Red Robin, or Queen Creek also has some breweries. They have additional fine dining that is actually rolling out as we speak. We'll have it in place in the next year or two. As far as shopping, of course, you have your grocery stores. We have Safeway, we've got Fry's, which is a Kroger brand. If you're in the Northwest, you're probably familiar with Fred Meyer's. We also have, some farming implement stores. There's Walmart. Only until very, very recently, if you wanted to go to Target, you had to drive into Queen Creek, but I believe there's now a Target opening off of Ironwood and Combs, so that's a first that they are finally getting a Target out there. And they did actually, Santan just got its own Home Depot last year, I believe. So slowly but surely, with that growth, with all the apartment complexes that are being built out there, and the new builds, we'll get to that when we talk about housing at the end, but we are definitely seeing a lot of growth. We just don't still have the freeways, and we don't have a lot of great driving set up for that area. So there can be a lot of congestion, a lot of stop and go lights, so keep that in mind. Now, as I mentioned, if you are driving in for some nicer dining or entertainment, it's there, but you would want to anticipate at least a 30-minute drive to get into Queen Creek, just depending on where you are in Santan. And part of that is, it might say on the map that it's only 15 miles. I can just tell you, because of the driving that I was talking about before, anticipate 30 minutes no matter what. Now, one of the things you will see in Santan is a lot of roadside setup. You might be like, what are you talking about? But it's very, very common that you will see people out there selling salsa or plant cuttings or cat towers. Another one that you'll see around the holidays is empanadas. So, and let's not forget, of course, the shrimp from Puerto Penasco, what we call Rocky Point. Believe it or not, we're only about 4 hours from Mexico and from the ocean. And so people will go down there and they'll bring up the seafood that you can buy right there on the side of the road, take home and grill up. So it's a little bit different feel, very country feeling still in Santan. So if you like your cowboy boots, you love your big rigs and your side-by-side, your ATV, you will feel very much at home in Santan Valley. Now, entertainment-wise, I've talked about this in many of my videos that there's no end to hiking trails and motorbiking and your ATV side-by-sides I was just talking about. Horseback riding is very common to see people riding their horses in Santan Valley, and that's because it originally was all farmland. I mean, a lot of agriculture, and we still have a lot of farmland out there. So you're going to just kind of see that lifestyle, and that's one of the reasons if you are interested in Santan Valley, maybe not for the affordability for starter home pricing, but because you can find a lot of houses where there is a casita, an RV garage, a shop, somewhere where you can have your farm animals. That is definitely a place we would want to explore. So of course Santan has all of that nature style system, but if you're looking for something more along the lines of like a movie theater, hey, guess what? You got to go to Queen Creek. Or, an entertainment type place for your kiddos that's indoors, like a trampoline setup, or Fat Cats with their bowling alley and their arcade system, or Dave and Buster's, or even a huge park system and outdoor community pool that's not part of a neighborhood, but actually, something for the community, you're going to need to head towards Gilbert, Queen Creek, or Mesa, because you're not going to find those in Santan Valley. So again, just putting it back in there, buffering that 30 to 45 minute drive. Now, if you like golf, the great news is you don't have to leave Santan Valley. We have the one in Johnson Ranch, which is a huge community. I mean, they not only do they have their own golf course, they have their restaurant, but they have 3 community pools just within Johnson Ranch alone. There's thousands of homes in that community. But then we also have a unreal 5-star stunning golf course in Encanterra, which is a gorgeous community that's actually been incorporated in as Queen Creek. However, it is in the Santan area, and definitely worth, if you can get a chance to golf at Encanterra, do it. You won't regret it. Beautiful. And then we have a few other places like Solera and some other smaller golf courses. So jobs, there is not a ton in the way of jobs out there, other than maybe filling the positions for some of the places I've already mentioned. And the biggest reason is just because of what I said, there's no freeway. So big corporations and companies are not interested in Santan Valley at this time, because the soonest we are hearing we might get a freeway, if it makes, all the proper steps and there's a budget that gets put in place for it, is maybe 10 years from now. So if you ever are out at a new build site and they say, oh yeah, there's a freeway coming out here, no, it's not for a very long time. So I wouldn't purchase a home thinking, oh, my drive time's going to get better in the next couple of years, because it's probably going to be over a decade. However, there is, if you look at the surrounding areas, and we cross over into Maricopa, because Maricopa County is, part of Queen Creek, and then Mesa, Gilbert, versus Pinal County, where we're talking about in Santan Valley, there's about 500,000 jobs. So if you're willing to make that drive, and commute time, if you're looking to go into Maricopa County, you really should budget 45 minutes of non-freeway driving. There are jobs and there are opportunities. Now, with that being said, we do see a lot of our folks that purchase in the Santan area are either retired, so they don't have to worry about, that drive time, or they work from home, or they're just a first-time buyer that really is looking for the right price point, and they're okay with a bit of a commute. Now, if you need medical services or a hospital, no worries. Santan actually does have a hospital. It's called Banner Ironwood, and it's right outside of that crazy, amazing community I was telling you about called Encanterra. So if going to have a baby or you need emergency services, they've got you covered there. I actually, with my daughter, we volunteered for her senior year over there at the hospital, and it's a really nice outfit. Now, if you're not in the Banner system, then you will have to drive just a little bit, like I said, 30 minutes or so to get into one of the other hospitals. But the Santan area has urgent cares, they've got doctors and physical therapists and dentists and you name it. It has all of the basic needs that you may want or need, to get your teeth cleaned or get your hair done and physical therapy or whatever that might look like. So it's not so rural. Say that 3 times. It's not so rural that you can't get basic services. They are absolutely there for you. Now, if you look at some of our headlines, people are always saying, oh, Arizona, they have no water. They're going to run out of water. Well, let's talk about the water in Santan. They have great water. Santan and Queen Creek especially, both have done very well with water. And Queen Creek's was more of a planning that they are just so on top of it. I think they have one of the best water resources for all the area in Arizona, but then Santan has done well because predominantly before our rapid growth over the last few years, Santan has been agriculture. And agriculture, if you didn't know, uses up significantly more water than basic housing usage. So they have tons and tons of certificates, for assured water supplies. And as we have seen the density and population grow, what's happening is a lot of the agriculture is being switched over to either solar farming or standard housing, and so we're seeing some of that water usage be reduced, which is a good thing and helps keep Santan in a great place with water. Now, one of the things you will want to keep in mind with the water in Santan Valley is that it maybe has, it has a little bit less quality to the water itself as some of the surrounding areas in Arizona. And so in years past, it was run by a company called Johnson Utilities, which was horrible. There was tons of lawsuits. There was crazy shenanigans. Like, we felt bad for people that lived in Santan Valley with that private water company. But the state stepped in, and now it's run by EPCOR. And that private company has really done incredible things to turn it around. But the water here in Arizona is not only hard, we have this, this calcium buildup that just happens with our water. It's very hard on our systems. For example, I think we go through water heaters like every 10 years. It's just because of our hard water, to be very frank with you. But in Santan, it's often a good idea to get what we call an RO, or reverse osmosis system. So just another little cost to think about to budget into with your home purchase. Many builders, they will provide the water loop, so it's prepped and ready there for you to go. If we're looking at resale, a lot of the resale homes will already have it. It's just another thing that you need to think about when we're talking about the Santan area. So as I mentioned, it's not just the affordability of the house, but it's the totality of you're potentially going to pay a little bit more on your car insurance because it's more rural. You are going to pay slightly higher on your taxes because Pinal County taxes are a little bit more than Maricopa County taxes. Now, when I say it's a little bit more, our taxes here in Arizona are amazing. Like, literally, we moved here from Oregon and could not believe, we're not talking like California taxes or, Illinois taxes or Oregon taxes. I think literally in our Pinal County house that we have, I want to say my taxes on that house is worth, I don't know, $350, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, like a 1,300 square foot home. I probably pay like $1,200, $1,300 a year in taxes. So our taxes really aren't terrible, but keep in mind, they're going to be a little bit higher in Pinal County. The other thing is you're going to need to subscribe to a company called Rural Metro. You don't have to, but we highly, highly recommend it. I mean, if you want to know more about what happens if you don't subscribe, pro tip, get on some of the Facebook groups for the area you're looking at. Plug in. You're going to see the feedback of, what the people living in that area already have to share. So Rural Metro is the fire service. You actually pay for a fire subscription because remember, Santan Valley is unincorporated. They're not actually a city. And so there is no city, fire that shows up for you if it looks like your house is on fire. And so when you make a phone call to Rural Metro, if you don't have the subscription, it's $600 after that phone call. And they will bill you, they will lien your house, and it is not a good thing to go without the subscription, because if the house burns down, guess what? They are obligated now to actually attempt to put the fire out, to take measures to not let your house burn down, and then they will of course bill you to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars and put a lien on your house. So should you go to sell it, you must have them paid off before you can take any proceeds first yourself. So you definitely want to factor that in, that rural metro, because you would not want to get caught without it. And then on the flip side, it covers you if you ever need an ambulance to the house because you're in the same boat. And then if you ever have a snake show up in your yard, they'll come and relocate that snake for you as well as part of that subscription. And it's not terrible. I think, you're typically looking at somewhere about $500-600 a year for that subscription. But if you don't know about it, that can cost you a lot of money. And that's one of the biggest reasons you want to work with a tenured realtor that's very familiar with the area. And then of course, when you're living in Santan, you're right under the Santan Mountain. And so the storms that come through can be a little more dramatic, which I always loved when we lived out there. It was super fun. I mean, the wind gusts, the crazy lightning, I don't know why it just seemed like it was a really cool thing to me, but not everybody loves that, especially if you have dogs. That can be a little harder on your fur babies as well. And it won't be uncommon that you'll see the giant trampoline go flying through the air, and you'll find it a couple houses over once everything dies down and the storm's back to the storm is headed off to a different direction. Okay, I've been promising you I would talk about the housing in Santan Valley, and there are such phenomenal opportunities. Let's talk about the new builds especially. Now remember, we have a saying at Rover that friends don't let friends go look at new builds without calling Rover Realty first, because if you go without a realtor the first time, they will not let you use a realtor to represent you throughout the transaction. And then they even have written in their contract and all over the place that you don't get a deal for not having somebody. It's just crazy to me. And there's so many caveats and ins and outs and things that you really, really must know about new builds to make sure you don't miss out on any opportunities, not to mention resale factor. You just really want us there. But Santan is where there's been massive growth with new builds, and this is good and bad. It's good because they are offering incredible incentives, paying your closing costs, unreal interest rates right now. In a world where interest rates have been super high, you can get good interest rates in Santan Valley, and it's affordable for someone to go and purchase a home. I mean, you can often get a monthly rate in Santan Valley on a new build as what you'd be paying for a rental, in Gilbert or Chandler or somewhere else in the valley. So definitely that has been a plus. There's probably 10 different builders right now building in at least 20 different communities. And because we sell so many out there, a lot of times we get the sneak peek, we get the information before they even open up. So definitely message me if that is on your radar, because we can get into a tour for you, or at least get the goods, find out more information before the rest of the world does, and get you the primo lot or the primo deal. Now, I said there's good and bad about the new builds, however. So the bad part is, well, at least for the sellers, is that the incredible new build opportunities have made it a little bit tougher on the sellers. So if you buy in Santan Valley and you are thinking this is a short-term jaunt for you, maybe only a couple years, this might be something you want to rethink about. And that's because the resale homes in Santan have been hit a little bit harder because of all of the new builds, believe it or not. And that's because the builders are offering all these incentives that the resale sellers often cannot match or cannot do. So we are finding that if you have a resale home with a pool, you're great, you're golden, because that's your one up against the builder. Sometimes we get clients that, if they don't get a pool when they move to Arizona, they think they're going to die. And so if they go resell with a pool, they have that instant gratification. They have that pool they can jump into when they experience our first 110-degree day. Whereas if you're going new build, of course, you'd have to purchase, or you'd have to go through that build process, as well as the additional costs that a lot of people don't want to deal with. But if you are resale and you don't have a pool, a lot of times those homes are sitting there for longer, which is an incredible opportunity for buyers, but for the sellers, it's often not so good, as your home sits there and maybe doesn't sell quite for what you had hoped it would go for, because what happens is the buyers will come and look at your house and they'll go look at the new build. The new build is super pretty. The new build has all these great incentives, and so they'll sometimes go with the new build, which has been a problem over the last few years. So if you're purchasing in Santan Valley and you're looking at a new build, you want to make sure that it is a situation where you're probably going to be there for at least 4 or 5 years, so that the new build activity that's going on over the next decade isn't terrible for you like it has been for some of the resale folks in Santan. But the great news is, as I mentioned, you can often find homes from the low 300,000, 1 acre properties. The homes tend to be, especially the resale homes, the homes tend to be more further spread apart, which is a big deal for a lot of people. They want a little bit of distance, especially if you're out in a more rural area. It's very common to find homes with shops and RVs. Many of our communities in Santan have community pools. So if you don't have a home with a pool, maybe it's not something you want to take on the extra expense per month, or you just worry with the kiddos, it's just not the right time to have a pool. There are communities, like I mentioned, Johnson Ranch has a community pool, and Cantera has a community pool, Santan Heights has a community pool, and many, many more. So there are lots of great options out there if you want to plug in to your community pool and still have that relief from the weather. So if you're still all in Santan, I am excited for you. We have so many friends and colleagues and clients that are in the Santan area. There's not a week that goes by that we are not out there. Shoot me a message. I'm a realtor. We work days, nights, and weekends, 7 days a week, and I am excited to help get you going on your Santan journey. And hey, if there's something I shared that you're just like, Santan maybe not so much for me, send me a message as well. I have alternative options. We work all across the valley, and we're excited to help find you the best fit for your family.